This is David Harder with workskunkTV. We're doing a series called the Pandemic Specials, innovative things people did with their careers and their businesses during the pandemic, and each one is a lesson for all of us. So how did one rock star revitalize his entire career without leaving home? Today we have David Philp with us, who is the founder of the iconic rock band, The Automatics. Welcome to the show, David.
I think, that very often we spend a lot of our time waiting for certain circumstances to line up before then it's all going to be okay. But all you actually get to deal with is what you've got. You start where you are, and wherever that may be, and for me, that was I was pretty much confined to the house after my surgery at the beginning of the pandemic. So and whilst I was in hospital, I thought, well, all those unreleased tracks that are sitting around, no one's going to know which mix I want or what tracks I want. So if I ever get out of here alive, which was quite a big if at the time, because the pandemic was going on, and there was another a third lung cancer surgery, So if I get out of here alive, I will, do that. I will release everything that's in the hopper. So I came back here, and it was a way of recovering. Of course, then also the pandemic was going on, so I couldn't trip the light fandango anyway. So I just did that for the next 3 or 4 months, and then I put them out. I wanna be.
After getting help from his friends, together they selected Grand Swan Dive Into the Void as the cover song for a new album. David talks about the isolation we often find in life that could be walling us off from our best life.
For a long time, I'd been in my own little trench. There's a time early in your career when you absorb influence. You're just a sponge. All goes in. And then as you begin to develop your own thing, it becomes a little narrow trench and you repel influence. You just dig deeper and deeper into the trench to become what you really are. So this was a period when I came out of the trench to discover that, there were all these other bands.
The world waits.
Yeah.
Fairy tales made into dreams.
They released one album and it got onto UK heritage charts right away. And then one by one, the album was being picked up in other countries.
But
you look so happy about it.
Well, yes, I am. It's nice, because for a long time, as you know, I did other things, that weren't, necessarily in my heart. But fortunately, and maybe luckily, I did quite well with that, and so I don't have to play 200 nights a year carrying my amp, or anything like that. I get to do what I want to do, and what I want to do is make music, and for some reason it's important to me.
During our interview, the topic of COVID and how it impacted our lives came up many times, because we really did change, and now we have people paying attention to time, which is actually precious. Some of us have support in realizing how precious it is, but for those of us who've gotten through life without any major trauma so far, I know it's rare, people that have had that tend to be more respectful of the time they have and the time they have left.
My sense is, look, I get on the freeway and there's just as much traffic as ever.
Sure.
I went over to the studios in Burbank this morning, and all the traffic was backed up as far as I've ever seen it on Coldwater Canyon.
I tried to go through to Westwood, but my GPS put me on Beverly Glen, and I didn't want to end up in Encino.
So some buggers are going back to the office, but I think that it's given us a perspective and an insight we might not otherwise have had. In the immortal words of Joni Mitchell, something's lost when something's gained in living every day. And we all had to double down on ourselves in the pandemic, and for some people maybe their demons came out and they drank, and for other people they became more of them and spent more time with their family, which their family will never forget. I mean, those kids that grew up having that intense experience with their family are going to be changed by that, and their subsequent careers are going to be informed by that. So we lost some stuff. We lost going to some parties. We missed the openings. We missed, the company. But I think it made us double down on us. And again, it's coming back to that what I was talking about. The trench. Of what am I? What do I do? And I suppose everybody used those 2 years in their own way.
This journey of yours, where is fear in the equation? How do you relate to fear?
That's always an issue, because you think you've got beyond it, and then you discover there's another layer of it, and that it's a subtle undercurrent rather than, but I think there was a point in my life, when I stopped plugging the hole with booze and drugs and all that kind of stuff, where I let go of fear. I think, there's always going to be fears. You want people to, you're human, you want people to like you, you fear that they won't. You want people to like your song, maybe they don't. You want people to think you're a stand-up guy, and sometimes you aren't. So we have to, we have to find the line in there. And I think I just kind of surrendered the whole thing.
I often tell people that waiting to be fearless is an enormous waste of time. Okay? And what you were sharing there is you took action whether you were afraid or not afraid. The issue of fear showing up, sometimes it would happen when you least expected it, and other times you just walk past it.
Yeah, and I think also it's part of where you are on the road. Because,
what does that mean?
Well, I'm thinking there comes a certain point when you've done the apprenticeship and the deal, where it becomes fairly academic what other people think, because you know what you think. And that again, I think, comes from the craft. Look, I want you to like my song, but it's a preference. I prefer for you to like the song. If you don't, I'm moving on.
So both of us had difficult childhoods. And this narrative that you're giving to your life, it seems to me that part of what you're doing career-wise has helped heal that part of yourself. Is that the case?
Yeah, because particularly if you've had problematic childhoods, you end up feeling fairly sorry for yourself. And sorry for yourself doesn't get you much in the greater scheme of life. At some point you have to become the adult.
My question is for the creative individual who's not having commercial success. Pablo Picasso and Andy Warhol made various statements that it's just as important to establish an artistic business as it is to have an artistic medium. Okay? And so many artists fail terribly because they are unwilling to establish sales skills, marketing skills, to understand how to get help from the people that can really help them make a career. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, sometimes I think it's people blocking their own path. They can see somebody can help them and probably is disposed to help them, but their head has a contract on their ass and they don't know it. So they go out there and they piss that person off. And it's actually quite amazing once you're aware of that and when you see it around you, because they seem to be quite oblivious to, we don't see our own stuff. Once we see our stuff, it's not our stuff anymore. We're done with it.
When I first started my company in 1990, there was a career book out of the market called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And that book enraged me because there was nothing in it about the practical side of making a living from your art. It was like enough just to do the art and people would find you. And the profound difference for me came from Andy Warhol, and on the surface it sounded so simple. But he said, do what you love, you can always sell it.
Yeah, well, I think Andy had a unique take on things. I mean, at the time, everybody thought it was a swizz that he wasn't actually making these pieces himself. The people in the factory made the silk screens.
Sure.
He didn't necessarily touch any of them except maybe to sign them. So this was considered a bit of a swizz. But that in many ways was the art.
Some of our greatest new artists take sound bites from hundreds of other recordings and artists and splice them together into a whole new thing. And I find that progress always offends many of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of guys from my era, they want to go back to analog. They want to go back to fantastic old studio with fantastic old gear and capture a performance, And my experience of that is that I remember making records back then. You'd go in, you'd be all jazzed up to get in there and record this album, and then some bugger hits a drum for 3 days. Oh, we're getting the drum sound. At the end of that, I don't care anymore. Whereas I kind of embraced the modern Pro Tools technology. I could see that, the sounds weren't as good, and certainly there's a lot to be said for capturing a performance of a bunch of guys who really play well together. But that's not what you're really doing here anymore. what you're doing is you're putting it down on a grid, and once you have it on this grid, you can fly stuff around. So, you know, you put it down, you go, well, I don't really need that second verse in there. I go straight into the bridge. Or, you know, the hook here is really what that guitarist played in the intro. So I'm going to fly that into the solo, and then I'm going to put it over the top of the choruses at the end. You know, so music is maths. You know, and it's seeing patterns, and that's what I like about the new technology. So, you know, we say about people, well, they're taking building blocks and they're using them in their own way. Yeah, they're all bricks.
I totally
And some
agree.
of them may have been made by somebody else, but you still, at the end of the day, have to build your own edifice.
Because now I can sit in my office and play at midnight with 30 other instruments, and I have performed all those tracks, and it's giving me an understanding of music that's
You're
just
learning by
stunning.
doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you look over there, that's a speaker made by a guy who made speakers for Elvis. He was incredibly influential. It's the rock and roll Holy Grail. I don't use it because these speakers carry their own amps. The technology has advanced way more than that one. That was a studio speaker in the 60s and the 70s in one of the top Texas studios where a lot of hits were recorded. But you know, this stuff is just clearer and better. You know, in using this technology, I didn't have to have other musicians in the room with me, because you know, you fly a file, you send the actual stems to Jim in Cleveland or Frosty in Sussex or Tom Morse in Berlin.
David in Santa Monica.
Yes. And then they send it all back and you put it all together from that. You know, and you have an opportunity to, well, he's doing this, so we don't really need to be doing that. You know, and so there's a different process than, you know, the more organic one of sitting in a room with a bunch of musicians and he goes plink and you go plonk, you know.
Well, you're speaking to my point of view about technology, is that it's here to give us freedom. Every time that we advance technology, we have new ways to live, to work, to leverage our power.
I think technology is a good servant and a bad master, like money. You know, so, and there's a lot of, the magic comes from doing it. It doesn't come from thinking it. You know, go out and do it, and then you're on the path. And when you're on the path, things will happen. If you don't ever get on the path, I can guarantee you things will not happen.
As David and I finished our conversation, I thought of a song he wrote that moves me so deeply every time that I hear it. And it's called Grow Old With Me. Thank you for joining us today. We love you. You can get access to workskunkTV and notifications from us every day simply by hitting subscribe. And you can learn a great deal about succeeding in the new world of work by going to workskunk.com and taking a free membership. I look forward to our next journey together.